the most important elements for the style of photography that I do is the compositing part. It's taking one image from one place and putting it together with another to create one seamless image. I want to talk to this a minute because I find it truly important that this part of this style of photography is done in the right order. A big pitfall is to take a picture over here and a picture over there and think that they're going to come together seamlessly by working on the computer. It's not really quite how it works. It starts with the light quality and then it follows with the perspective, and if these two things are done right, the elements will fit together quite seamlessly from the beginning without too much work on the computer. So it's important to plan, and I want to go through that process with you. I always start with what I call the unmovable element. It's the one thing that I can't really adjust too much, like a mountain, like a landscape, that I can't turn around or move, like a person. It's easy for me to relight a person to fit a landscape. It's harder to light the landscape to fit a person. Whenever you do composite photography, it always starts with one element. Everything you shoot afterwards to be combined with that element has to follow the same light quality, the same perspective, and the same kind of lens. If you deviate from any of that, the new elements won't fit the first. So we start with the unmovable part. As I said, that should be the landscape. So if you have that, shoot it in the best light you want. And then if you, like we are going to show you, put in a train track or you put in a person, you will see that the light will need to follow that first element, not the other way around. So to set yourself up for success, go shoot a beautiful landscape. Then you know the camera height, where the sun is sitting, and the lens that you used, and then every element follow that recipe. And when you do so, it all falls together. So I'm going to show you some examples and talk about the light and perspective and show you something that obviously don't fit together and something that do fit together in the examples that we shot. We might talk about why composite photography for a minute. Why not shoot everything on location? And two elements to that. Sometimes you can't fit the two together, as in, oh, we want to shoot something in Alaska, but we want to shoot some model or something else that sits, in Los Angeles, and you combine the two together that way. The second is problem solving. The third, which is amazing for someone starting out, is that you can create really highly produced pictures on a lower budget. For us, I wanted to shoot these beautiful landscapes in Bishop. If this was old school, we could have laid down train tracks, which you physically can do. We have worked with people in Los Angeles that will come and lay down train tracks for you in any landscape. So with a lot of money, we could have chosen this location, put down train tracks, flown out the models, and it would be one highly produced picture in a beautiful landscape with the train tracks. Now, obviously starting out, and even for me, it's kind of infeasible to do that for a personal project. So what you do then, with a great idea you want to execute, shoot the landscape on your own, make sure the light quality and the lens and the camera height and all that stuff fit, and then shoot the elements where you have train tracks already. So, hopefully close to the town where you got good models and all that stuff. So compositing is truly a problem-solving tool. I'm a photographer first that see pictures and see light and see ideas. And I really use the composite work as an extension of that to fulfill that vision, rather than sitting at the computer thinking, I'm going to create something today. It starts with the light quality of that immovable plate, and the layers are added. And that's how you truly create these seamless composites. So we're going to look at some of these examples that I have on the screen. And we start with the background, the immovable plate. And I want to show you a few examples of how it shouldn't be to start out. And I've taken just a random picture that I've taken prior from a different shoot and later into this landscape. Obviously, you see the sun in the background is right over here. The sun on this image comes from the other side. Obvious mistake. Still though, we can try on the computer to blend the elements together and it will feel somewhat decent. It could pass, but the eye would always feel that something is off. So we want to avoid this and be conscious when we go on location that the light quality is from the right direction. So I'm going to turn that off and show you a different element. In the second example, I want to show you when the discrepancy between light and camera angles are a little bit more subtle. This is the actual background, but it's shot with a slightly different camera height and in the middle of the day rather at sunset. So you can see in this composite that you're close, spending a lot of the time with the computer. We can maybe massage this to feel pretty good, but still the eye will not read this as being perfect. As you see in the train tracks, they end in the middle of the landscape. To have this be proper, it has to end on the horizon line like this. But now it looks like they are floating in the foreground. Pull it back down so it looks like they are really sitting in the grass right here. The horizon line doesn't line up. This is only because of maybe 3 feet distance in camera height. So we talk about that on location. I just want to show you the example that camera height and distance is truly important when you create these composites. Again, light quality looks similar, but not quite there. Underneath these trees, underneath the grass, you see we have a tiny bit of shadow. There's no shape to it. Versus on them, really soft light coming straight from the right. Discrepancy there. We have to make sure that the light qualities line up. And it's quite simple. When I shoot this background landscape with the sun coming down right here, I know when I'm going to shoot my composite piece, I look this way, the sun is here. When I shoot the composite piece, I look that way, the sun is right there. And I do this all the time. I'm not quite sure if I did this for this particular shoot, but I often do like this, and I walk around knowing that my sun is here, my picture is here, and I do like this. Then I know that wherever I shoot a composite piece, my sun will need to be right here. Sometimes I could flop elements knowing that if I do, the sun will be right there. And I walk around like this. It will help me clarify in my own mind where the sun is at the composite pieces. Then we measure the camera height, put it together, and then when done right, the image will look something like this. A fairly seamless photograph where the pieces fit together. Not too much done here in Photoshop to make sure this happens like this. It's fixing color a tiny bit, but for that, they just lay right into each other. And I'll go through that extensively, both on location and when we do the retouch. Shooting the elements right is just crucial for the kind of composite photography that I do. And knowing the basics of this is just paramount in order to create a good composite. I've done a couple of simple illustrations that maybe makes it a little clearer for you, the few things that I just showed you on the computer. In this first illustration, you see 2 different camera heights, and you see the eye line of these cameras. On the other side of the 2 cameras, there's 2 dots. Those illustrate the horizon line of that camera perspective. And as you see, those 2 don't line up whatsoever. So when you go out and shoot, you have to be aware of the camera height when you photograph someone. It's also a bit about the perspective. If you lean it down or if you lean it up, that will also change when you do the composites. So do make sure camera height and the way you point it is the same for both the unmovable part and all the composite elements that follow. The obvious one is the sun, the light quality. We see it all the time in composite work where things are not quite lining up. So you have to have a really keen awareness of where the sun is for the unmovable plate, the one you start with, and the elements that you shoot after. Now, a way to get around this, obviously, is to give it that strobe look that's quite popular, where you have a background piece, you cross-light it, and you put that person in there. Then you create a style that doesn't need this. But if you want to do a seamless composite image, like the one that we're going to show you in this tutorial, you have to follow the light quality for all elements after. The last is the focal length of the lens. The classic example is the trend that we had a little bit back with these super wide angle lenses with hands coming towards the camera. If you have that kind of distortion, you have to also have that kind of distortion on the background. If you shoot the back plate with a longer lens, you got to shoot the composite elements with a similar lens to create a similar distortion of the different elements. So those are the elements to create a seamless composite image. I'm excited to take you on location and show you the whole process as we shoot them, and also afterwards when we retouch these pictures together.